Hey everybody, welcome to our session on building affinity groups and empowering volunteers. I'm thrilled to have you all here with us today, and even more excited to have this discussion with our speaker, Greg Fansler. Now, before we dive into this discussion, I really wanted to give a huge shout out to everybody who's you know been a part of our LinkedIn Lives and our webinars so far, and especially the ones that we had recently, uh, a topic on engaging your international alumni community. So today we've got a really hot topic with Greg here today. And just like a quick intro, I'd initially, interacted with Greg as a part of our Advanced in Spotlight series. More on that a little later. And I just realized he's got like a wealth of wisdom to share with the community, and I realized I had to have him here, yeah, on our LinkedIn Live series. So Greg currently serves as the Executive Director of Engagement and Alumni Relations at Missouri State University, bringing nearly a decade and a half's worth of experience in the field. Before Missouri State, he's worn multiple hats at Virginia Tech. And I'm pretty sure I haven't done justice to his background and experience. So without further ado, I will pass the mic on to Greg. Greg, could you talk a bit about your journey so far?
Sure, thank you. So, and really appreciate you having me here, Jonathan, and excited to go on this 30-minute journey with you. And thank you to all for attending from wherever you are, from based off LinkedIn across the country and across the planet. So welcome. For me, really, my career had 14 years at Virginia Tech, as Jonathan mentioned, number of hats from chapter program, management of the Affinity program, really got into events and for the latter part of my career, and including reunions and actually managing a constituency group for us at Virginia Tech called Cornerstone Alumni. And we can talk about that a little bit later. Joined Missouri State now 2 years ago, so 16 years in alumni relations work. And for here, I've been the Executive Director of Engagement and Alumni Relations. We have a strong team here that works not only in engagement work, but also we manage the annual fund. And so the work that we do here, we'll talk about a little bit later, engaging affinity groups and growing that support. I'm excited to go on that journey with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Greg, for being here with us. Just a little more on the topic at hand. Affinity groups represent a way for alumni to organize around an industry or a professional interest or even a shared identity. Now, while most organizing efforts, based on classes, seems like the most surefire way to simultaneously reach the largest group of alumni, it's seen as typically not the most effective, because it's noted that many alumni actually feel little connection to the majority of their graduating class. So instead, they feel a greater connection to the various affinity groups they belong to during their time on campus or experiences post-graduation. And so that's why we're having this conversation today. And in today's discussion, really aim to shed more light on how we can boost affinity group engagement and leverage alumni volunteers to achieve that. And I'm just going to dive right into the questions today. So Greg, why are alumni affinity groups important? And secondly, have you seen a shift from graduating class affinity groups graduating class to affinity groups engagement?
Yeah, certainly. I think we've all seen that in the field. Before we do that, I do need to give a plug for those traditional-based, class-based reunions that are still out there. I know there's a handful of folks that have really doubled down and leveraged their reunion program, and it pays off. It just requires a significant amount of resources and volunteers, which is basically the core topic that we're talking about today. And if you have the staff and the resources, you can plan a reunion weekend that does bring back 5-year anniversaries and do it well and raise a lot of money for the institution as well. And so we're saying that, but it does require a significant amount of investment. As it relates to why affinity groups are important and the shift to, absolutely. I just look at our own homecoming next weekend. We're celebrating a 40th anniversary for the Alpha Chi Omega sorority. Wrestling reunion is coming back, and we're excited for that group as they have not reunioned ever. We have Black Alumni Network and the Latino Alumni Network, among others. Last year we hosted track. And so all of these, to your point, are shared experiences that that were important to us as students, and how we identify and still keep folks connected to. And so it's really important that the institution works with the volunteers, the people that are spearheading this, to plan, promote, and then point to folks that, hey, this is a chance for you to come back in a much larger scale event like Homecoming, and leverage that kind of big university programming to bring more people back. It's a win for all.
Yeah, for sure. And I think something that I've noticed also is that affinity groups take into consideration who alumni are right now as opposed to who they were when they graduated. So that was like an interesting, just viewpoint of how affinity groups versus class years, how that categorization comes into play. But Greg, coming to your role at Missouri State, what are some affinity groups that you have right now that are thriving well at the institution?
Yeah, right now we have a group called the Black Alumni Council, and they're past year 5 now here, and gone through some iterations. They have a constitution and a bylaw, and we've recently recategorized them and named that, hey, we've identified you as the Black Alumni Council. You're the leaders who are interfacing not only with us as the Alumni Association, but the voice of this constituency to the institution. And so we do an awful lot of work connecting to our Chief Diversity Officer and to the President, and they are the voice. And now we need to continue to put our foot in the sand and say, let's rebrand ourselves a bit, and let's really make us the Black Alumni Network, so that we can do programming regionally and not just here at the institution, because that just sounds a little bit better, right? And so that group is in its second phase of really trying to tell the community that, hey, we have a group of volunteers and you can be a part of it. We need your support. We need to make sure all generations are represented in the council. And let's get to the work of building community, not only here in Springfield, where there's 30,000 alumni, but in our larger pockets in St. Louis and Kansas City. And our goal is to get to a Black Alumni Reunion, the first one ever, here on campus in 2025. And so we're trying to map a 1, 3, 5 year plan to ensure that the constituency has identity and has stake and has an event that we can build and start to measure engagement around. We also have a very healthy retired faculty staff group here. Now, that's not a traditional constituency, but there's a significant number of alumni here at this institution that worked their entire career, and they want to stay connected, and they also support it in more ways than there's just their time and talent, but also their treasure. And so we have basically 6 events a year where we're hosting them. There's a group of 20 that give us advice, significant advice about what they need and what is indeed required. And so that's a fun group to work with. Our Golden Bears would be another group that had a traditional programming, and Golden Bears are our folks who've graduated 50 years and beyond. And that's a really important group to every institution. It dominates philanthropy as it relates to your donor dollars. If you all have run those stats, I'm sure that aligns with your own institution. And so we got to do more than just their traditional homecoming breakfast that we've been, or lunch that we've hosted over the years. And so we got to form a constituency group, an affinity board, to advise us about what's needed in the community. And so those are the groups that are thriving.
Nice. It's really good to hear, Greg. What about groups that you're planning to set up? I bet you have like a vision in place, right, for new affinity groups that you want to.
Probably could have mentioned this in the other group, in that we've just started a Council of Latino Alumni. In fact, the first in Missouri here to do and point to this constituency. And so this was born out of a faculty member here who's been here for 20 years, 30 years, and as well as some other faculty members. And they've retained connection to these students, and they want to have their own identity. So and to come back and grow to a reunion themselves. So that's one that we've just launched this year. Our marching band, which is called Pride Bands. There's theater and arts and music is huge here at Missouri State. And our band is basically what people come to our football game for. I'm teasing if you're watching this, the football coach. But it's a big deal. And it's kind of its own fraternity sorority in itself. And so we need to do more, and we're going to make sure we highlight them at our homecoming messaging as we go live on Facebook and social media, because that's just such an important constituency to this institution, and is a really good one to grow engagement beyond the traditional things that we see the band doing, which is playing. They want to come back and they want a reunion.
Yeah, that's awesome, Greg. Looks like you have like a full road plan ahead. When it comes to setting up these, you mentioned a couple of affinity groups you want to set up. What are the challenges that you've run into, when you're thinking about setting these up, and how are you dealing with those challenges right now?
So first, I would say just clear expectations. I think the volunteers that have raised their hands, it's really important that you articulate your mission as the Alumni Association, the Office of Advancement, what have you, and say what are we here to do, and then that buy-in occurs. I think that is very important. About here's what a goal would be to grow towards, and then to offer a chance to dashboard and measure, so that we all want to work towards something that we can see progress in working towards things. And so that's the expectations part. I think a big challenge is also your internal team, because it's not just pulling some alumni together and planning events and that magically occurs. It's significant pressure on your communications and marketing teams. It's significant pressure on your advancement services as you look to define, track volunteers. It's pressure on your finance. We're creating accounts in the foundation and also on the university side to sustain and create a funding model, so that as we plan events and registrations occur, maybe we can grow towards a scholarship one day, and people that want to support that initiative, that supports that affinity group per se, with the right way, we can get to a scholarship one day. People want to support that, and so it's really important. Your internal teams have to be on board. You have to be able to line up the vision and then make sure that you're not causing additional pressure, which you will be, but when is it appropriate to do so? And so that's an important conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Just having a clear goal and setting up those proper systems in place, right, to ensure success is super important. By the way, if any of you guys online have questions, please put them down in the chat. My bad for not mentioning that a little earlier. And if you have questions, put it down there and we can highlight it and I can take a stab at answering those.
Thanks for the shout out, Matt, by the way. I appreciate that. It's very kind. Your $20 is in the mail.
All right. Noah Cook, how much does each chapter receive towards a budget provided from the OAR Alumni Association? Are they dues paying or no?
Great question, Noel. So each chapter right now, since we've just started alumni chapters, that is a different conversation. But for our chapters, we are supplying each, depending on their area, a little bit of seed money to start programming. And the intention is, of course, to start planning events that have a little bit of profit margin built into it. And that way we can grow towards a scholarship. As far as a specific number is concerned, it just varies. It's probably going to be 10,000 to some of these larger pockets of areas. And then we're just going to seed the smaller areas where we have maybe 4,000 or 5,000 alumni, and let that go as it relates, and just internalize, consume that or assume that in our budget. We are not a dues paying association. We aren't here at Missouri State, and we weren't my previous institution. And so it's really important for chapters to get stood up. But to the point about affinity groups, Black Alumni Council, for example, they've raised a good amount of money, and they've actually built in a membership that fee, which isn't necessarily membership, but it's just a $50 contribution to anywhere in the institution. And that ensured that you have an ability to come to the annual meeting and provide input. And then if there was a vote, that membership, that $50 contribution was really your ticket into having your voice heard at the vote level. So that's how they fund themselves. Not all that money goes to the council. People can support if they would like to, but now that we have in our second iteration of our Giving Day, our third's coming up, These constituency groups will, we've only had one represented in Giving Day, and that has really created the response for having others being represented in this platform that you're sending and cascading out to your Giving Day to say, hey, I want my constituency group represented too. That's a way to help fund your organization to get that programming started and grow engagement.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for the question. Happy to dive deeper to that too if you want to connect on LinkedIn or something.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the challenges I often hear when speaking to advancement folk is just keeping that engagement alive, keeping that robustness alive. So how do you ensure that these affinity groups remain self-sustainable over time? How do you leverage volunteers to keep those groups active?
Oh, there's no silver bullet on this one. It's hard. It's engagement work is a lifestyle. I've said this throughout my entire career, and it's centered around the ability to form relationships and connection and authenticity with our alumni. I had alumni chapter leaders that I met come to my wedding, right? Because they become friends almost, and that sounds maybe not everybody's like that. I get it, but you do grow relationships with people, and if you're authentic in your mission and what you're trying to do, and there's a deep pride and institutional pride. People come together in that like-minded, and they want to support this institution that you're at. So I think it just boils down to the relationships and goes back to what we shared earlier, and that's clear expectations and understanding of this is what you're committing to, and let's ensure that we succession plan correctly, so that if you're going to be the president of the Black Alumni Council for these 2 years, who are you shepherding and bringing along to fill those roles when your time is no longer on the board in that role? So really important, and there's probably others out here that can talk about succession planning but we'll pause there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think in any sort of arena, relationships is 100% the key to building engagement. So let's take a step back. So we talked about how to maintain those relationships, how to maintain engagement. But what about identifying alumni volunteers in the first place? Like, what is the framework that you use, and how do you keep them motivated?
It goes back to just the core work of what we do as an alumni, whether if it's in your chapter programming, whether if it's supporting a college. It's really important that if you're going towards, or there's a group out there, that you're mentioning that in your remarks publicly, and then also in your conversations. And so, we've got to make sure we're always trying to. You can't share everything when you have a couple minutes in front of a large group. I get it, but it's important, particularly for affinity groups that you're trying to grow, particularly marginalized groups, that you want to make sure understand that the university supports and is trying to grow and provide a space for community to continue to flourish, and that everybody is welcome. And that's really important to say. Those people will come up to you after your remarks, and that's a way to often to talk about what the next step is. That's how it's kind of organic, right? You do your broad-based solicitation and email. Hey, here's an all call for volunteers in an area. You'll get a handful of folks, and you just need to follow up with that conversation. But it's, look to the people who have raised their hand and have come to events. I would certainly look to people who have made sustainable gifts to the institution over the year. There's clearly a commitment there, and diving into the data and working with, if you don't have access to that, working with your data team to be able to find those folks and in the constituency group you're trying to grow and support. But we're just in a data world these days, and if you're not comfortable diving into a spreadsheet, you need someone on your team who is, and you need to be able to get deeper into that and have some warm calls to these folks to say, I see you're interested, you're supporting this effort.